Thank you once again for making Locked On Texas Tech and Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. I am Jake Hatch. He is Chris Level. Now, Chris, Rondo Fehlberg was the AD for BYU in the mid to late 1990s, and he is still here in Utah. Actually, funny enough, did a lot of the work he did before becoming a college administrator in the state of Texas, funny enough. It's just kind of one of those unique connections. But when he came to BYU, he came in an era when BYU was the dominant force in both the WAC and then in the transition over to the Mountain West Conference. And he came on my radio show when the transition happened that Tom Holmoe announced that he was going to retire. We had Rondo on to talk about what the AD at BYU has to do. And he made a very interesting comment. He said that BYU wants to be, and he called him the big dog. That's the quote he used, the big dog. But he said the thing BYU will never do, at least in his opinion, is say that they are the big dog. They're not going to themselves go out there and pound their chest and say, we're the big dog of the Big 12 conference. He said, the way you want it to happen is you want the other schools in the league. He said this happened in the WAC, this happened in the Mountain West, that they understood, whether they said it or not, that BYU was that proverbial big dog out there. And I think that's exactly what BYU and Texas Tech should aspire to, is to have the other 14 teams in this league, whether they say it outright or not, acknowledge that these are the two dominant forces in the conference.
Yeah, this was because Texas gets a lot of credit for things maybe that they're doing now that they did not do in the Big 12 conference. Oh, this was Oklahoma's league in football. They ran this league in football for a decade, okay? The championships prove it. Yeah, there were some sprinkled in examples, and then we've had this one stretch where there's two different teams playing for the conference championship in the last 3 to 5 years and whatnot. In basketball, this was Kansas's league. I mean, they won the conference, and yeah, Texas Tech shared a title one year, and there's a sprinkling of some, but mainly it was you had to go through Kansas. And I think right now we're seeing what Houston has been able to do in basketball and what they did last year. Right now, it's their league, okay? And they don't have to say a word. Everybody would go, yeah, your conference record would suggest you. So, but I don't know if anybody from a football standpoint, like, 3 years ago, and then as the league has kind of changed and added different members, there's really nobody that's just been, and you look at the Vegas over-under win totals, and I think there's 8 teams that either 8.5 or 7.5. Okay. Right. So it's a jumbled up mess. Point being is that, yeah, and it's going to be difficult for you to earn enough respect because you can't just do it 1 year. You got to do it consistently, and you got to win championships, plural. But you're right. I think at this point, there's a lot of people pointing to Provo and to Lubbock right now going, whether it's facilities, whether it's NIL, whether it's buzz created, whether it's, they signed this guy or they're, however you don't want to spin the wheel and pick your topic here that you've created the buzz on, it absolutely is the way that I think you would want to be talked about in many ways. Again, you've got to go produce, and it's got to show up. And, I would say that's why, like, one of the biggest games on Texas Tech's schedule this year is when BYU comes to Lubbock. I just think that these two teams will be predicted to do big things in the fall. Again, in basketball, can't wait to see when these two teams match up. But you're kind of the needle movers in this league right now. You are – Colorado was maybe last year, but I think a lot of that goes away with some of the folks that graduated on that program. Yes, Dion's still there, but they haven't had a lot of buzz this offseason, not like BYU and Texas Tech have. So I don't even know who else I would put in this category. It's clear that these two are way out in front based on what we're talking about here.
Now they're making headlines right now, but as you point out, if you want the lasting or you want the staying power, guess what? The flash is what you're doing with the money and everything, what you're doing in NIL. And you mentioned the facilities. Grant McCaslin, you guys just announced he's getting an extension. I am fully expecting a reworked deal for Kevin Young coming really, really soon from BYU to make sure that he is locked in for the long haul here in Provo, even though he's just 1 year into a 7-year deal. The bigger point is, if you want to, as Rondo Fehlberg suggested, be that big dog, okay, You've made the inroads in terms of people talking about you right now. What's going to make it last is if you can back it up. You're talking the talk right now. Now you got to walk the walk. And you mentioned the fact that BYU and Texas Tech are scheduled to meet in November. That feels like on paper, as you mentioned, one of the more pivotal games on BYU and Texas Tech's schedule, because quite honestly, with those over-under win totals and how jumbled they think this league might be, whoever wins that game may have the inside track at going to Arlington.
Yeah, the conference race is likely going to be decided by one game. I mean, Texas Tech. I mean, you know what kind of year you had last year, and we're on the outside looking in. Texas Tech needed one more conference win, and they make it to Arlington, and they beat both of the teams that played for the title. Mm-hmm. And so the margins are going to be razor thin, but it's going to take these teams doing that and producing and cracking the code and getting to Arlington and winning it and all that to, I think, justify a lot of this conversation. But it's again, I've enjoyed the feather ruffling that has been done here, just because this is somewhat new around here. I think it's probably new for you too. You're in a different league. It's a different time. Your donors are stepping up and they're playing the game, and it's created a lot of hope, a lot of expectations. There's a lot of pressure. Yeah. I think all the above. And I think that's a good thing, though. It's better than being somebody that, yeah, we'll see what they do. Who cares if they're good or bad? There's no it just would be terrible existence to be in. Like, I think a lot of the Big 12 is right now, when there's just zero buzz about some of those programs. But I think the buzz you've created has really helped the league in many ways.
Well, and that's the hope, is that BYU can have some staying power here, because I know Brian Santiago, who was just installed as the new athletic director at BYU, I was at his press conference, and he said afterwards, we need to be a force in this league, for lack of a better term. And he said he understands there's pressure. He said nobody's going to be underrating BYU going forward. They're gone are the days of being picked 13th out of 16 teams in the football poll. Gone are being, I think they were 11th in the basketball poll. That is not a thing anymore. If BYU's outside the top 5 in either one of those preseason polls, somebody screwed up big time, it feels like, or something crazy happened. But that's the thing. You've got to embrace the pressure, but then you also have to produce. And that is, I think, going to be the ultimate tell for both of these schools in this league, is that either they're going to continue to make the haters hate on them more because they're winning, or the haters are going to have the final say and laugh at you because you fell flat on your face.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I don't, the last year's preseason football poll is still wild to me. That'll go down as an all-timer compared to how when, the reality of what actually happened versus what everybody thought a year ago at this time.
Correct.
Crazy sports, man. It's like you can't predict it, you can't figure it out. But you're right.
We watched a team go from 16-1. Here's the thing: we'll probably be in this league. I don't know how long BYU or Texas Tech will be in this.
Will never happen again.
Literally, that's never going to happen again.
Yeah, never happen again.
Now, we've talked a lot about money, Chris, and there is one particular name, and he's a Texas Tech guy who is making headlines both at the football level, but also like political level, like national politics. Who is Cody Campbell, and why is he so important to the Big 12's future? We'll talk about that as we continue on right here on Locked On Texas Tech and Locked On Cougars.